Most people, especially in the Western world, believe the conflict between the United States and Iran began with the Islamic Revolution, the hostage crisis, chance of death to America, or the nuclear issue. But all of those are consequences, not causes. The real roots run much deeper, and they go back long before ayatollahs, sanctions, or uranium enrichment ever entered the conversation. In the late 19th and early 20th centuries, Iran, then known as Persia, didn't see the United States as an enemy. In fact, America looked very different from the other foreign powers circling the region. It was far away, it didn't have colonies there, and it wasn't carving up territory the way Britain and Russia were. While those empires were busy pulling the strings behind the scenes, controlling finances, influencing politics, and locking in economic privileges, the U.S. was seen as something else entirely, a potential honest broker. Persia even invited Americans to help reform its institutions. One of the clearest examples was Morgan Schuster, who was brought in to modernize the country's financial system in 1911. At the time, Iran didn't view America as another empire. It saw it as an alternative to the old ones, and the relationship was built on a surprising level of trust. That perception began to shift in the 20th century when oil became the lifeblood of global power. Iran was sitting on massive reserves, but it wasn't calling the shots. Western companies controlled production, profits flowed overseas, and Iran received only a small slice of the pie. Oil stopped being just an economic asset and became a matter of national pride, independence, and the country's future. In 1951, Prime Minister Mohammad Mossadegh made a bold move and nationalized Iran's oil industry. In plain terms, Iran decided it would finally run its own show. For Iranians, this felt like long overdue justice. For Western powers, it set off alarm bells. If one country could take back control of its oil, others might follow, and the entire global energy order could start to unravel. In 1953, the United States and the United Kingdom backed an effort to remove Mossadegh from power and restore the Shah's monarchy. From Washington's perspective, it was a strategic move during a tense global era. From the perspective of many Iranians, it looked like outside interference in their internal affairs. This moment planted a lasting sense that whenever Iran tried to chart its own path, someone from the outside stepped in to redirect it. In the decades that followed, Iran underwent rapid modernization, industrial growth, military expansion, and major infrastructure projects. The U.S. became a key partner of the Shah's government. But progress came with tighter political control, crackdowns on opposition, and a powerful security apparatus. For many Iranians, modernization started to feel less like advancement and more like dependence, and America increasingly looked like the force behind the system. By the 1970s, frustration was bubbling up across different parts of society. Religious groups, intellectuals, and nationalists alike. The Shah wasn't just seen as a ruler anymore, but as a symbol of outside influence, and anti-American sentiment gained traction. The 1979 Islamic Revolution marked not just a religious shift, but a political and national break from the past. Overthrowing the Shah was framed as reclaiming independence, and the takeover of the U.S. Embassy was seen inside Iran as a response to years of perceived interference. From that point on, relations moved into a sustained phase of conflict. The U.S. lost a key ally, and Iran doubled down on its determination to remain independent of external pressure. The Iran-Iraq War in the 1980s deepened Iran's sense of isolation, especially as international support flowed to Iraq. Many in Iran interpreted this as proof that the global playing field wasn't exactly level, reinforcing a self-reliant mindset. Sanctions soon became a central feature of the standoff, increasing isolation, mistrust, and ideological tension. In Iran, they were often viewed as a continuation of past pressure. The nuclear dispute that later came to dominate headlines didn't create the conflict so much as add another chapter to it. The debate wasn't just about technology, it was about security, status, and sovereignty. The United States tends to frame its actions as maintaining stability, while Iran frames its stance as defending independence. These competing narratives became deeply ingrained over time. The conflict didn't appear overnight. It evolved through struggles over resources, political decisions, and historical memory. A key turning point was the mid-20th century intervention in Iran's internal affairs, after which mistrust became part of the political landscape. After 1979, the confrontation shifted from diplomacy into economics. Sanctions moved from being a side tool to the main lever of pressure, and they didn't emerge solely because of nuclear concerns. The immediate spark was the 1979 hostage crisis, when Iranian students seized the U.S. Embassy in Tehran and held 52 American diplomats for over a year. For the United States, this was a political shock, a blow to prestige, and a challenge to international norms. Washington responded by freezing Iranian assets, the first major economic sanction against the new regime, hoping to secure the hostages' release and signal that confrontation came with consequences. Over time, however, economic pressure became a long-term strategy. Following the revolution, Iran criticized Western influence, supported movements seen as anti-Western, and promoted regional independence. Washington viewed this as a threat to allies, especially in the Persian Gulf and broader Middle East, and sanctions became a way to curb Iran's external reach. During the Iran-Iraq War, the U.S. aimed to prevent Iran from gaining the upper hand, using economic pressure as part of a balancing act. Restrictions touched technology, finance, and military supplies, initially to contain rather than isolate, though they tightened over time. In the 1990s, sanctions gained new justification amid accusations that Iran backed armed groups in the region. The U.S. expanded limits on investment, the energy sector, and financial dealings, turning sanctions into a systematic policy designed not only to influence behavior, but to restrict economic capacity. In the 2000s, concerns about Iran's nuclear program triggered a major escalation. Fearing a potential military dimension, Washington extended restrictions to banking, oil exports, and international transactions. For the first time, sanctions reached a truly global scale, with allies and international institutions joining in. Over time, sanctions stopped being temporary and became baked into policy, driven by a lack of trust, competition for influence, and differing views on security. For the U.S., they became a pressure tool. For Iran, a symbol of outside control. They aim to limit revenue, investment, and access to markets, but their impact goes beyond economics, shaping domestic politics, foreign strategy, and public perception. In Iran, they're often seen as the latest chapter in a long story of external pressure. In the end, sanctions didn't arise solely because of the nuclear issue or the hostage crisis. They grew out of a political rupture, geopolitical rivalry, and mutual distrust, eventually becoming the primary mechanism of confrontation and a defining feature of this long-running relationship.